Welcome everyone to our webinar series, Action, Pages, and Bears. Oh my. It's going to be a great session today. I'm now going to turn it over to Kim Albee and Margaret Johnson.
Hi everybody, welcome to the webinar today. Hi Margaret.
Hi Kim, how are you?
I'm good. All right, are you ready to get going?
Let's go.
Okay.
This is going to be a good one and we're so happy you're all with us today.
I know, it's fun. And I hope everybody's starting to enjoy summer too.
So let's start out by talking why we're doing this. And for those who have been with us on prior webinars, you know that we asked a question in a past webinar, what's your biggest boggle? And in our last session, we addressed the number one issue, which was attractors. The number two biggest boggle that we heard is action. And when you can cause visitors to take action, a certain set of things happen. You can track their interest. You can become increasingly relevant to them, which is critical, so critical. And ultimately, you get more customers. And frankly, if we're not getting more customers as a result of all the marketing work that we're doing, I'm sure you all agree, we're just having fun. But we've got to get more customers to make it all work. Enough said.
Yeah, very good. All right, let's do a really quick review. So really quick review, we've already talked to you guys about attractors and how to build them. That was our last webinar. So once you have those attractors and you gain your audience, you send those out and the people really engage with those, you add them to your lead database. Then what you've got is you've got 3 types of emails that you can respond with. Go for it, Margaret.
Well, those 3 types of emails are simple. They're the broadcast emails, which are the emails that you send to everyone with specific links inside them, and we've talked about these a number of times before, and I do want to insert, if you missed the Attractors webinar or any of the past webinars, they are on our blog at contentzap.com/blog. You have your broadcast emails, your nurturing emails, which are how you get people further down their journey, and then your fulfillment emails, where you're delivering to them the thing that they purchased, or you're delivering the services, or you're simply saying thank you for buying or thank you for engaging. Those are really the 3 types of emails that you're going to send after you've got a lead in your database.
Right. And the cool part about a fulfillment email is that when you have a lead capture form and they complete your lead capture form, you're basically saying, hey, I'll give you this really cool thing that you want in exchange for your name and email, likely, maybe more information. And when they give you that, you want to verify that they gave you a good email address, right? It's part of the exchange. So if you then take them to a thank you page that says, thank you so much, please check your inbox. An email will be arriving shortly with a link to the resource you requested. You're all good to go, right? Because then you know and you can continue to track that. So that's why fulfillment emails are such a good thing to have in your kit here.
And Kim, that's a great point. Don't have your fulfillment email don't have your thank you page just deliver the content that they've requested or the price quote that they've requested. Deliver that via email so you've got a confirmation that you've got a good email address.
Exactly.
So Kim, what's today's focus?
Well, today what we're going to talk about is, when you're sending your emails, what's a reasonable ask in an email? In other words, you could think of a call to action, a CTA, what we're calling an ask, right? What could you reasonably ask people to do from an email? And why do some landing pages convert better than others? So we're going to be exploring, when you have a link in your email and you drive them to a page, we can call that a landing page. But why do some convert better than others? And what's an example of a bad landing page? So we're going to kind of give you some things to think about around that. And how do I keep this going? Email after email. How do I keep it all humming along? And where do the bears come in? Okay, because I know all of you are wondering, what the heck is this to do with bears? We'll get to that.
We will get to that.
So Margaret, what's a reasonable ask in an email?
Well, that's a great question, and we hear it all the time. In fact, the reason that we're doing this webinar is because we heard that question over and over and over again. And the key to what you want to ask in an email is you want the recipient to do something that that recipient sees as valuable. They have to get value out of this transaction, not you. So what kinds of things are valuable? Well, things that are helpful, or informative or educational or insightful or attractive.
Well, thank you, Margaret. Thank you for the compliment.
You're totally welcome.
But that's not what we're talking about, is it? When something's
No.
attractive, right? It means the offer is attractive. What you're asking them to do is attractive to them. So I wanted to cover, when we were coming up with this, yeah, you want to be helpful and you want to be informative and educational and all that stuff, right? That's all good stuff. But there are times when, hey, 20% off if you act now is absolutely what you should be doing. So I wanted to say, well, attractive. And so we had this whole conversation about it, but it's an attractive offer, right? So what's an offer that your recipient's going to see as valuable that they could do, right? So that's why we put attractive in the bottom.
Exactly. So let me ask you this question, folks. What's wrong with D's calls to action? Here's our latest news, or get a discount on our product or service, or buy our stuff, or sale, or worse, and Kim and I both have a pet peeve about this. You download a paper, or you look at a piece of content, and the next thing you know, you're getting inundated with messages from a salesperson saying, when can we meet? When can we meet? When can we meet? Well, what's wrong with those? Here's what's wrong with them. Only 2% of your audience is ready for these. 2%. Because you're depending with CTAs like this on intersecting with a buyer at the exact moment they are ready to make a buying decision. And that's a problem because 98% of your audience isn't there. So what we need to explore are those intersections, and we need to shift our mindset from buy now and you'll get value to here's value, would you like more? Here's value, how else can we help you? Go ahead, Kim.
And that's really good. It's perfect because now when you can do this, think about it. You can engage not just those 2% that might want to become a customer today, but you can include the 98% that doesn't, right? So you're not losing anything by taking this kind of an approach. You can turn lurkers into leads and those who are ready to buy into customers. So you don't lose out here by shifting your focus, right? But there's just challenges. There's just challenges to shifting the focus. And one of it is that people are so self-interested. So the truth is that if where you go to is buy now and what I want you to do and what can I get you to do and all that, your focus is clearly on you and what you want. Mm-hmm. What we're saying is your focus needs to shift. The hard part is shifting your focus to actually be concerned about them, be concerned about your leads. That's the shift. It isn't all about you. So you got to give up that self-interest in order to gain the value and the results you really want.
Exactly. And doing so will also engage the other 98% because part of the point of lead nurturing is that we nurture people along their journey. So when that 98% falls into that 2%, right, when they go further down in your sales funnel, you've been engaging with them all along. And now you're the default choice when they hit the point of making a buying decision.
Exactly. And that's what we all want, right? You want to be the preferred vendor going into the sale.
Top of mind.
Yep.
And you want to be known as the people who help. In fact, it's kind of funny. We talk sometimes about, how our content lives forever. And all that we do lives forever. And in a past life for me, I actually was a Genu customer for many, many years, and I did a ton of webinars and events and newsletters and things like that. And I remember a salesperson coming up to me once and saying, I met with so-and-so. And I'm like, so-and-so, I think he's on our list, but he's never attended a single event that we've done or a webinar. He said, well, here's the thing. The reason he chose to do business with us is because he knows that we're an organization that cares about educating our customers. So this guy never showed that he was consuming any of our content, but he was noting that we were providing it. And it was the deciding factor when it came time for him to determine what vendor or what partner he was going to choose to do his, in that case, technology implementation with.
Right. So in that case, you went from lurker to customer.
He went from lurker directly to customer. Exactly.
Kind of interesting. All right, so let's look at examples of effective email CTAs, like calls to action in your email. What we're going to do is show you, this is a webinar invite series. So I want to highlight that webinar. What we do is we never just send out one email about something, ever. We'll send out, so this is a 3 email series. So we know that email 1 looks a particular way, email 2 has a slightly different message, and email 3 is sent the day of, right? So it's hard to see. I guess you're going to have to look really closely, but you can see the subject lines on emails number 2 and number 3, the way I created the screen grabs. So go for it, Margaret. Talk about email number 1.
So email number 1, this is all a webinar invite, as Kim said, and what we do is we do 3 different invites, and each with a slightly different tone, but still a very collaborative voice. So the first one, you can't see the signature line on the first one, but it's a note from Kim saying, here's what we're doing, and I'm really excited about it, and here's why it's going to be valuable to you. The second one is a little bit more formal and is not from Kim, and in fact at the bottom of it there's photos of the speakers. And the third one is, hey, can you join us a little later this morning? And those 3 emails work really well together, but here's the critical piece. If you signed up for this webinar as a result of getting invite number 1, you'll never see invite number 2 or 3. If you sign up to use from email number 2, you'll never see email number 3, because we're able to say this person has taken the offer, so don't give them the offer again. In fact, that's another one on the pet peeve list. In fact, I'm currently getting emails from somebody who's trying to convince me to attend a workshop, and clearly he doesn't have a record that I was at that workshop in December. So I'm kind of amused by it, because this particular person is very highly thought of in the email marketing space, but I'm looking at him and going, amateur hour, he doesn't know I was there? Why is he pitching me so hard on this?
Right.
So that's a really key component, right? When people take your offer, don't keep offering it to them.
That's right. Now on these, you can see on email number 1, you can see that we have a call to action here, more information and registration. And we also have this register now link down here. So we've provided this information. I can tell you that every webinar that we've done, this right here gets the majority of the clicks to conversion to register. This right here gets just a little tiny fraction. So
yeah,
that's what
we looked at that and we discovered it's like 95% are on the second call to action and only 5% on the first call to action.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, because most people will teach you that the first call to action is the one that people will generally accept.
Right. So,
not true.
Right. So that what's important here is to test and to look and see which ones are the ones that, which link is working the better. On this email, here's what's interesting. This link right here far outperforms this link down here. So more information and registration, we could conclude that as a link, as a call to action, is less effective than register now to reserve your seat or register now. Those tend to perform better in all of our testing when we're actually out to have people register in a webinar or attend a webinar. Going on to email number 3. Now, this is what's interesting. This email right here, we added into our series in terms of how we invite people. This goes out the morning of, and it basically says, the subject is, can you join us at 10 a.m. Central Time? This is important stuff. Now, what I just read with a test that went out from Marketing Sherpa was that people are so busy, if you can direct them to a time, and if that fits with them, that can be a very effective call to action. So we've been doing this, and in fact, we get a lot of registrations the morning of, and it has improved our overall attendance rate for the webinar as well. So again, you only get email number 3. If you don't register on number 1 or number 2, you'll get email number 3. And then we only have one call to action click right here. So we tell them what it's going to be about, and then we say, if you have time and you think this sounds like something that you want to really get started with and pursue, you can do that. So it all works really nicely. Anything else you want to add to that, Margaret?
I think you did a great job with that. Let's go to the next one.
Okay.
So this is another example of effective calls to action. And I got to tell you, this is a super interesting story. So if you've been with us for a while, you know that we produce these documents called scoops. And these 3 emails is the series of 3 emails that, with minor edits, we send out when we release a new scoop. What's really super interesting about this, so first of all, I should say, like the webinars, if somebody takes the offer, if they download the scoop from email 1, they never see 2 and 3. And if they take the offer in number 2, they never see number 3. But here's what's really fascinating. Email number 1, it doesn't say a word about what we're asking them to download. Here's what it says. This is really important stuff, and I want you to have this information. And click here to get it.
Include the subject line, though. Tell them what the subject line is. I mean,
the subject line of this one is one word, invisibility. And this is the email that accompanied our scoop called the single biggest reason your emails aren't being read. But nobody knew that was the subject line of the scoop. It's not in the email. It just says one word, invisibility. And the message is, we've been looking at a particular issue in marketing, and we want you to have this stuff. Here you go. Totally, what we call totally blind. It's a blind email. Kim, how were the results of that?
They were the best results of all 3. I mean, by far. It was wild. So, and here's the thing. They clicked on the first link, far outperformed the second link in this email. So again, that's why you got to test and look. There's no hard and fast rule, but this first link totally outperformed. And the downloads that we got out of this initial offer, this one far outproduced all of the others. So the blind email where people didn't know. So that means they have to go off of trust of who you are and your brand and what they know about you. That's what has them taking action, right? So it was very interesting.
But I want you to remember that trust word. As we move forward, that's an important thing, and I'll tell you why in just a few minutes. So the second email, if they didn't take the offer from the first one, the second email, the subject line is presenting the single biggest reason your emails aren't being read. And it basically says, have you ever wondered if you ever really wanted to fully understand why your emails don't get read? Well, click here. We've got a paper for you that'll tell you that. And then email number 3 is a very logical, rational email about, as a marketer, I know that you really want to understand things like this, and we've got some great information for you that will help you, and here's how you get it.
Right. And so the second performing one was number 2, and the least performing one was number 3 in this particular series, in this particular test. But again, if you took the offer on number 1, you never see email number 2, and you never see email number 3. Again, because we take out the people who take action automatically. So the ones who have got it already, we aren't continuing to offer them the same thing. Okay?
Now, here's another example of an effective email CTA, and this is in an email that sits in a nurturing sequence. And the key thing I want you to hear about this email is that this is not an email that goes to a landing page. This is not an email that has a form that needs to be filled out. But here's what's going on behind the scenes. When people click that link, we're tracking it. We've got points assigned to it, so we're scoring the lead who clicks that link, and the lead record reflects that they took that action. And we can now do even further nurturing. The other key thing, though, is that that particular link goes to a blog post. On the blog post, we have calls to action on the sidebar, and even inside some of our blog posts,
right,
we have calls to action.
Right. So
Kim, why don't you expand on that?
Yeah, let me show you what we're talking about here. So, you can link to a blog. So this was a blog post of our Turning Lurkers into Leads webinar. And what we did, this is a call to action. So with our WordPress plugin, you can easily create these calls to action. And when you hover over, when the mouse hovers over, it ends up changing, right? So if you were to click this link, then what happens is you get a little pop-up form, and you can fill in your pop-up information. We will pre-fill it in certain cases for you, but if you forwarded the email and somebody wants this thing, they'll go in and they'll change the information, and then you click download now, and you get a confirmation. You've never left this page, so you can take this, go through this whole process, and continue to read the blog post. So this is all part of, I'm showing you here, this is our Content Zap site, it's a WordPress site. We're using our WordPress plugin, and that's our CTA library and our calls to action that come right with that plugin that you can utilize, that make it super easy to do your lead capture and then say, hey, check your inbox. It's been sent, right?
Yeah, and the other thing to think about there too is that on WordPress in particular, it's generally speaking kind of tough to have different sidebars for different blog posts, and I just want to mention in passing that our WordPress plugin does allow you to do that, and you can create CTAs that are relevant to the blog post that you're sending people to.
Right,
So
and you
that's
can
kind
have
of
all the
important.
same, yep, and you can have all the same sidebar. That's a really good point. So that, because I know I've tried all the different sidebar widgets, they suck. And you have to manage them all the time and all
Frankly
that.
speaking.
Right, and quite frankly, it's, what you want is, I have this blog post, what's my good call to action? Build a call to action library, specify it, and you can generate more leads just by making that available and easily making that available. So let's move on. Now that we've shown a blog, sort of a blog, quote unquote, landing page, let's look at, well, why do some landing pages convert better than others? And a couple examples of good and bad, and these are going to be more generalized, what you would think of as a landing page, not necessarily a blog post, right, Margaret?
Exactly. So let's look. So this is the one where I have trouble not singing, but I might sing anyway. It's all about those forms, about those forms, about those forms. Here are some examples from what we call our Hall of Shame. These are actual forms, lead capture forms, that are on people's landing pages. Get the white paper, get the download now. And they're asking a tremendous amount of information. Well, folks, the more you ask, the higher the friction. The higher your abandonment rate is going to be.
That's right.
And these things are nuts. I mean, even the one that looks shorter wants to know what your quarterly advertising budget is. The one on the right-hand side, get the white paper now. They want my first name, last name, title, company, address, city, state, zip, country, phone number, my primary business, my job function. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's crazy. It's all about those forms. So I got a question for you. And that question is kind of important.
We're going to ask
I'd like you to just take a minute to answer this question. When you get a giant form to fill out like those that we just showed you, do you tell the truth?
So we're going to do a quick poll so you can answer and then see how everybody answers, and then I'll tell you what I do.
This is fascinating. No and heck no, we're far away the leads, but we've got a few people here that actually say yes. Let's see. Everybody voted? Okay, 48% say no, 47% say no, 27% heck no, and 27% say yes.
Okay, now think about this, right? So just think about, if you want everything under the sun, think about when you walk into a party and you meet somebody for the first time. You barely even say, hey, I'm Kim, I'm, whatever, right? And then imagine if you introduced yourself and then they said, yeah, where do you live? Do you have kids? Are you married? Where do you work? What's your job title? How long have you been there? Where'd you go to school? Yeah, where'd you grow up? Where were you born? Imagine if you had to answer a barrage of questions right after meeting somebody. What would you think of them? Right?
Exactly.
So what you want to do is if you have a lot of friction, you have to look at, where are you in your relationship, for one, given the kind of content you're offering, and then what's appropriate to ask given what you're out to get. So that's part of the issue here.
It is definitely part of the issue, and in fact, we have a really relevant question that's come in, which is, if it's bad to use forms that ask too much information, is there a way I can get that info after the initial form capture?
That's awesome.
Well, that's a great question, and the answer to that question is yes, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But what we're showing you here is the lead capture form that we use for our content distribution quick start guide. And as you see on the form, we're only asking first name, last name, email, and then email confirmation. We've discovered sometimes that people do a typo in the email, so when we put the email confirmation in, it does get that a little bit cleaner. And of course, the download now button. Very, very simple. But let's look at the next one. And the next one shows you that now, well, okay, it's a different one than I expected was coming up. So on our event registration pages, we do ask for more information. So we'll be circling back to that in just a moment. But this is another example of a landing page. And Kim, do you want to talk about this one a little bit?
Yeah, I would just say that this is a really simple landing page. It just highlights the value that benefits what you're going to get, and then you have your download now, which pops a little form. You fill out the form, you get a confirmation, you're all set to go. So this is another sort of landing page and a different type that you can do. And this is just a straight, you'll notice there's no nav up here. We've suppressed all the nav. So it's what some people would call a squeeze page. You either take the action or you leave, okay? So that there's not a lot of clicking around to anything else.
That's right. And when you hit that download now button, a little form pops up. And in this case, I believe it only asks first name and email address.
Right.
So this is a very light form. And
but
then
here's the answer and into a couple of different things, and Margaret in just a second. But what your answer is you can do progressive profiling. So progressive profiling would be you get the lead, and then as you nurture that lead and you offer them other kinds of downloads, you create a form that has more information that you want to gather, like one field at a time, and you pre-fill with the information you know. So you make it super easy for them to just fill in the remainder, boom, get their next thing. So that's one of the ways you can expand what you learn about a lead. But this one, we actually ask for more information, so go for it, Margaret.
Well, in this one, we ask for the organization name. And first name, last name is in here as well. So if somebody came in on one of our landing pages for the Scoop and became part of our lead database and all we have is their first name and email address, well, now they're getting invited to our webinars. When they sign up for a webinar, now we're getting first name, last name, email, and organization. Here's the thing, and I just want to reflect for a moment on those big giant forms that we saw. Those big giant forms have one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to qualify a lead as much as possible in a form fill, which is the most ridiculous thing you can think about, because it's not the job of a form to qualify a lead. That's up to sales, okay? You get them to a point where they're what we call marketing qualified, which means that they're expressing all this interest, and you give sales as much information as you can. But don't think about asking things like, what's your quarterly marketing budget? Because even if your organization only deals with people who have a, let's give an example, an office supplies company, maybe if your organization only deals with people who have an office supplies budget of $1 million a year, okay, it's not marketing's job to figure that out in the process of a form fill.
Right. I mean, think about it this way. You're getting the new lead, and that question, what does that leave you with? It makes me think you're already trying to dig in my pocket, and all I want is this little download.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Exactly right. So here's the tip that really answers the question we got earlier, is that your fields in your lead capture forms are scaled and included based on the value that the recipient is getting from you. With a paper, that's not necessarily high value before they've read it. It might be hugely valuable after they've read it, but until they read it, they don't know. So If you ask them for too much information, you're going to get crap data in your database because they're going to lie, right? Or they're going to abandon.
Right. But if you
And
think
secondly,
about nurturing that interest, so say they download that white paper, if you have a really good nurturing sequence that goes into effect that deepens every aspect of what you cover in the white paper, maybe by sending them to relevant links or blog posts just like we just did, that offer more things like an assessment, grade yourself on this, or a checklist, how you can do this better, or cheat sheets, how you can implement this. Think about those kinds of downloads to supplement somebody downloading a white paper sort of thing. Now, every time they go in and they get something new, you can ask for more information just progressively
exactly.
through each one as you step them through that process. And now you've got a fully qualified lead in terms of the kinds of things you're learning, but you're doing it really appropriately.
Now, the other thing I want to ask, and just to address that one question, is that GNU and some other systems in our space actually will also do a social profile retrieval based on an email address. So you can also get more information about your leads behind the scenes, depending on the email address that they've used to engage with you.
Right.
So there are ways to get more information outside of lead capture forms. And so that's kind of an important, but it's very much a side note to what we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just as a caveat there, if all you asked for was email address and somebody completed that, with GNU, we'll go out and do a whole social lookup, returning back many times their first name, their last name, and their organization name right away for you, and their picture and all kinds of things that you can now know that we just fill in their profile for you. And it matches probably about 50% of the time. You actually find a match that way.
Exactly. So side note, but in answer to the question, that's another way to do it. So the key message here, scale your feeds according to the value that your recipients will receive and the commitment that you have. Things that take a bigger investment on your part, if you can demonstrate that that investment is valuable to your recipients, you can generally ask for a little bit more information.
Right. And I would say what you really want to do is you want to ensure that your call to action that you do in your email and the way your email is set up to your landing page experience of that landing page better be consistent. So you don't want this like, oh, you clicked through and then it's like, what the heck is this? And it's this complete jarring kind of experience because it's so different, like a bait and switch thing. So you want to make sure that doesn't happen. So you want to make sure your CTAs connect appropriately to your landing pages, right?
Right. And in the column of pet peeves, here's some other examples, and maybe these will resonate with some of you. Here's a paper. Wouldn't you like my paper? Here's a paper. Here's a paper. And you take the offer, and it says this paper is available once you subscribe at a cost of X dollars per month, or once you purchase this membership, or once you buy this product. You've just been baited and switched.
Right.
And that is very uncomfortable. So don't offer value and then send people to a buy now page. That's going to alienate your lead pool quicker than just about anything.
Right.
You've got to be consistent in your value statement. So your landing page should augment the value statement that enticed them to click in the first place. The look and feel should be similar. Even if it's a very different looking landing page, at least your colors and fonts should be similar so it feels brand consistent. And your tone and voice should be consistent too. Don't go from, hi, I'm super collaborative and awesome, and then you get them to a landing page and it's all like, download now, this is the best mop in the world. It needs to be consistent in tone and voice as well. Right. Mostly don't make people feel like they've gone to some foreign land when they act on your CTA.
Right. Yep.
And that's super important.
Yep. And I would say, so I think enough's been said there, but you just want to make sure that you're consistent all the way through and that your landing page picks up where your email leaves off.
Exactly.
So another question, can you have CTAs without landing pages?
Well, thanks for asking. Yes, you can. You can absolutely link to ungated content. It could be a blog post like we showed you before, and I think we're about to show you again.
No, I don't know.
Just make sure it's trackable in your platform.
And score. right?
Exactly.
This is Margaret's mantra: score, 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 lead scoring, because it helps you separate who's interested from who's not really, really quickly, and then who's more interested than others. So it helps you kind of grade and score that really quickly. I mean, you can
If
pull
you're
up
not
reports.
scoring, your leads might as well be snoring.
Ah, you're
I
funny.
just made that up.
Huh?
So again, we're taking you back to that example we showed you before, right? This is a nurturing sequence email, has a link in it. There's no landing page, there's no form to fill out, but we're tracking the clicks, we're giving points. Their lead record reflects that they took that action, and based on them doing that, we can now do further nurturing. And as Kim pointed out earlier, we're also giving them an opportunity when they land on that page to take a related call to action that's sitting out on that right-hand sidebar.
Or within the blog post itself, right? Which
Exactly.
brings us to this really big point, because we've talked a lot and there's a lot of emails, right? And a lot of content going on here. So how do I keep this going? Email after email.
That's a great question, Kim, and I'm sure you have an answer for that.
Build habits in a library. That's my
That's the
answer.
answer.
That's my
Exactly.
answer. So don't say everything in your email. Like we've said in previous webinars, don't put everything in the email. Make them click. Link them to someplace else to get more. Make that a habit. Regularly create a new call to action or a download. Start with one a month. It's brainstorm it, put it together. It could be a checklist, it could be a cheat sheet. We covered this in our last webinar on attractors. We gave you a whole bunch of different ideas on what you could do there. Create just one, and then one per month. That's all you got to do. And pretty soon, before you know it, you're going to have a CTA library that you can use and reference all over the place and really
Exactly.
maximize. I mean, we have 3 scoops right now, and we've leveraged the hilt out of those scoops.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all we've done in the last 6 months. So so we don't even, and we do webinars on a regular basis, but we're adding content, and we do lots of different things with our content. But in those, we've leveraged the hilt out of those.
Exactly. And
Evaluate,
there's another great
yeah,
tip too, is look at your website today and figure out whether there's content on it that you're not gating that you could gate. One of the things we see a lot is people create white papers, and it's click here to get the white paper, and you click it and there's the white paper. And the web browser turns into a PDF displayer. I mean, you've all seen it, right? Well, could we gate that content? Absolutely, we could gate that content. And by gating that content, of course, I mean putting a lead capture form in front of it. And now, guess what? You're starting to build your library with stuff you already have.
right. We worked with one of our customers to do just this. They had content that's really rich, awesome content. And they've written books and everything else. And they were having people drink from a fire hose. They had so much content, but people didn't know how to sort their way through it, right? And it was freely available. And what we did is we created a site for them for their book. And I've featured this in other webinars that we've done. But basically, we gated access to the content, and we guided people through getting the different quote unquote tools that were available. And they had in a 1 year period, they had 2,500 leads that they never even knew they had before, because people had to sign up. And they were doing lead gen. They knew what
Wait,
people were looking at. They knew what people were getting, what they were downloading, and then they could engage with them. That was
Kim,
just from putting one.
did they turn lurkers into leads?
They did, but they did it through just putting gates on their content. It wasn't like anything amazing. And they actually started to guide people. Like, if you're doing, here's another tool you can add to your tool chest. Here's another, and we did a whole nurturing sequence with them that allowed them to really guide people. And then what we found out, this is what's amazing. This is how good their content is. When someone comes into a site, you think, okay, we're going to offer them this primary piece of content. We'll nurture to follow up with them. Well, we offered them the primary piece of content, and then they kept looking through the site, and we had other links in there. People were downloading on average 6 downloads per visit. I mean, that's
Wow.
extraordinary. And they were starting to see this. And so they could see that interest, and they could get them to marketing qualified, and they could actually follow up and find out if they wanted to go through their certification training, if they wanted to go to their annual conference. I mean, there were all kinds of ways, or if they had a consulting interest for a certain issue that they had in their organization. So it was a pretty neat thing to see them go from totally ungated to really guiding leads. And it's a really good case study from that perspective.
And I think the big point there is it was content they already had.
Yep.
So that's what you need to do, folks, is evaluate your website, see if there's content that you could be gating, or if you've got things on your website that would be effective links to include in email, even if you don't want to gate it. But when people take action, you score, you track, you record, and you show it in their lead record.
Right. But you're always asking people to take an action.
Exactly. And finally, look at what you've already done. Beck? Have you done webinars or videos or white papers? Have you built assessments or checklists? Are they sitting out there? Are there things that you reserve only for your customers that maybe you could start offering to your prospects and getting them deeper engaged with you? Right. So that also builds your library. This is how you keep this going, email after email, month after month. Yep. Absolutely.
So, Margaret, where do the bears come in?
Oh, my goodness, Kim, they've been here all along. And here's the thing, folks. If you follow the best practices that we've outlined here, you won't see the bears. But if you're doing things or if you know people who are doing things like saying, here's value, and when they get to a landing page and it's a buy now, spend money, give me your credit card number kind of landing page, that's a bear. You're turning your leads into bears. When you are misleading your leads, you're turning them into bears. Right. When things are not consistent from your offers to your landing pages, you're turning people into bears. So the bears have been here all along. But you now have the power to eradicate the bears and make sure that your leads don't turn into bears. And that's really the key message here is, if you alienate your leads, what are they going to do? They're going to unsubscribe. They're going to tone you out. They're going to stop engaging with you, and you will have lost them. And just like email has the power to get leads, it also has the power to kill leads. And that's the part that we need to be very careful of in how we communicate with our audiences, right?
Right. Yep. And that leads us to our next session. What converts? We're going to do a session on conversion and landing pages specifically, landing pages that evoke action. We're going to be looking at the different options that are out there for you to build landing pages, the format of landing pages, how they work, long form or short form. Should they be longer or shorter? In what cases is one better than the other? How to incorporate lead capture forms for maximum conversion. Do you show the form right there? Do you click on a button to get to a form pop-up? Do you take people from your landing page to a download form page to then a thank you page? What's the best funnel? And then how do you test accurately? How do you get some good tests that give you an idea of how your leads respond so you can try new ideas and things like that? So that's going to be on Thursday, June 25th. We're changing the time from the morning to 1:30 p.m. Central Time in the afternoon. We've had so many requests for people on the West Coast that have to get up at, and be there at 8 in the morning to hit our 10 a.m. Webinars. We're taking that into account, and we're changing the time on this one to 1:30. We're going to start testing out a 1:30 webinar time. So please make sure you note that. And we're going to send a registration link to you when we post the recording of this session. And we'll also include a bonus opportunity in that email. So watch for that, and you'll be able to register.
Excellent.
And
it's going to be a great session.
And with that, open the question box and type the answer to this question. Given all the stuff, and a lot of you have participated on many webinars with us, some of you are brand new, but what will make the biggest difference in your successful implementation of online marketing? What are your biggest gotchas? What do you want to know? Please fill in the question box right now. Just let us know what that is, and we'll take all your questions from this webinar as well. So So do that. First, tell us what your biggest boggles are, what your biggest issues and challenges are with your online marketing. So do that, and I'll give you a minute or so. And then also think of your questions, because we love questions. As those of
And
you
we
who've
do
been on
have
our...
a number of questions that we could actually start addressing while
Oh, cool.
folks are typing in. So one of the questions that we got was one that I'm not quite sure how to answer, which is, what is the best format for download forms? Not sure. If you can clarify that, the person that asked that question, if you can clarify that a little bit more for us, we'd love to answer that. Not sure we can answer it the way you've worded it.
You mean horizontal or vertical, or yeah? If you can just kind of clarify, I'd love to engage with that one.
So here's another one though. Where are landing pages stored? Are they blog pages? You want to take that one, Kim? And
Sure.
Certainly we're going to go in more in depth in our next session on the 25th, but
Right.
How would we answer that today?
I would say landing pages are on your website. You could think about a blog being a landing page, but that's distinct. So the landing pages that we showed are actual pages on our site. They're not blog pages. They're actually a page with a form on them with a particular headline and call to action. Those are specific single-purpose landing pages. I want you to come in, I want you to complete that lead capture form and get the resource. Whereas a blog is more, you don't want to use your blog as just a form, right? Because people are going to come out, they expect content in the blog. So a blog can act as a landing page, as we illustrated here, but you've got pages. So if you've got a website, with Janu, we have a content management system that has a blogging platform and pages. So you can do pages and landing pages, or you can do a blog, or you can use our WordPress widget, and you can do all of that within WordPress also. So there's a lot of flexibility on different platforms depending on what you have. We could clarify, but hopefully that helps. You want to make sure, however, that your landing pages are on your property. So they're on your URL. They're not on some services URL. They're on your URL. That's what you want.
Exactly. And the prior question came back with horizontal or vertical. Which one is recommended?
I would test it with your audience. We do vertical a lot. We find we get good conversions there. I've seen differences. Sometimes you have to be careful and make sure that if you go horizontal, that your tabbing works really, really well for going from page to to field to field to field. Because depending on how you do that, it can get kind of funky. So I would say either way, you just test and see what works better.
Yeah, and I think it's relevant to add here something that's kind of important is there are people in this universe who are extreme specialists in things like landing pages, and they employ things like eye tracking studies and color studies and all kinds of science. In fact, there's all kinds of science about just about everything that you can do. But the average small and medium business or educational institution doesn't have the budget to engage with some of those huge studies. So what we're trying to do is giving you the benefit of our expertise without you having to spend boatloads of money to get into those studies. Certainly if you have boatloads of money to spend, some of those studies might be worth investing in depending on what kind of business you're in. But what we're trying to do is make this simple and accessible to you as small and medium business people and educational institutions who are trying to increase enrollment. That's what we're here for.
Well, I would say one of the things that you could look at, I would test it, but what you want to do is you want to look at, okay, if I send an email out, how many people click through and go to the page, that, the link, and then from that link, how many people take the action I want them to take on that page I sent them to, and what's my drop off? And you should be seeing, and once you have those numbers, you can then compare to more campaigns and see, well, did this work? Did that work better? You can do that. That's metrics. That's basic, right? So many people just don't even do that basic level, and there is no right answer. There is no right answer. It's not that horizontal forms are better than vertical forms. You can see huge conversions because it's about the content, it's about the call to action, it's about a lot of different things that you've evoked in your visitor or your user that that you need to pay attention to. So that gets
Exactly.
into psychology and emotion and all that kind of stuff, which I totally dig and read all about. So hopefully we're going to have some webinars in the future about just that, the psychology of it all.
Right. So a couple of other questions and kind of in response to the question that we just asked as well. I want to pay attention to this one. I'm working with a consulting company which deals with IT and business. Do we need landing pages? Well, landing pages aren't, whether you need them or not, is not relevant to what industry you're in. It's relevant to what offers you're providing to your audience.
Yep.
Want to expand on that, Kim?
Yeah, I would say that yes. My answer would be yes, you need landing pages. But here's the thing. What's your website looking like? So what are your calls to action? If they're contact us, request a quote, join our mailing list, those are the lowest forms of and the lowest performing forms of calls to action you could have. So the best thing you could do would be to have landing pages. If it's hard for you to do that on your website, that's why marketing automation tools like Genu exist, because we make it easy. You can match the look and feel of your site and build landing pages, that are easy to build and easy to use when you need them without having to go to your IT staff to get that done. So I say yes, you want to explore landing pages, because if you bring someone just into a page, you also want to look at, well, do you guide people through your pages? How well optimized is the page you're going to take people to, and is the action you want them to take very clear? Because a lot of times with web pages and websites, specifically from IT consulting firms, they're more like brochures than interactive, really engaging vehicles. So in that case is why I would say yes, you want to make sure you can do landing pages.
And I would just add that my past history is in IT consulting, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that landing pages work. Landing pages absolutely make a huge difference. But keep in mind this. Landing pages have this air of mystique about them. But in reality, everyone on this call went to a landing page to register for this event. And it didn't look like, the download the scoop page. It was just a page with a little form that said register for webinar. That's a landing page too. So, and that plays into one of the other questions we got. Looks like it's better to have a pop-up form than a separate page or a built-in box form. Do you have data on that?
Right.
Want to handle that one, Kim?
Sorry, I missed the question. I thought you were.
Looks like it's better to have a pop-up form than a separate page or a built-in box form. Do you have data?
Yeah, there is data. In fact, I watched a video about that this morning, where somebody had a form right on their homepage. It was an opt-in form, and they replaced it with a button that just popped a form, and they went from a 5% conversion rate to an 8.5% conversion rate on their homepage. So you would have to test that for yourself. I know that pop-up forms with lead capture forms are actually really, really effective. So rather than taking somebody to a whole landing page, but then again, you can take them to a landing page with the form right on the page, and those can also be super effective, like our webinar registration forms. So it just depends. And I would say, again, my answer to everything is test it with your audience. Play with it.
Exactly. If there were only one answer, there would only be one book. There wouldn't be a whole marketing section at Barnes & Noble.
Right.
And it really is your business model is unique. And how do we best talk to your audience is really the key. We have some other questions and feedback that have come in, but we've got like a minute or two left, and I know we want to wrap up. So I want to first thank everyone for the great feedback we've been getting through the questions panel, and thank you for the nice comments that we've seen as well. Very much appreciated. And Kim, let's take it home.
All right. Well, basically, thank you very much. It's been great having you. Please send us your questions when you have them to both, and friend us on LinkedIn, follow us on Twitter, talk to us. We're happy to to hear from you guys because we want you guys to rock and roll with your marketing. That is our biggest commitment. Both Margaret and I are committed to small business marketing success. So with that, I look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. Hold the date, Thursday, July 25th at 1:30 p.m. Central Time. Okay? And without any further ado, thank you so much. And we're done.